Good morning and welcome to the 35th meeting of the Economy, Energy and Fair Work Committee for 2020. Apologies have been received from Alison Harris and Gordon MacDonald. John Mason is attending as Gordon's substitute and Graham Simpson is attending in Alison Harris' stead. So I will first of all invite Graham Simpson to declare any relevant interests.
Thanks, Convener. No relevant interest to declare.
Thank you. I will now move on to agenda item 2, which is the Protection of Workers' Retail and Age-Restricted Goods and Services Scotland Bill at Stage 2. I am pleased to warmly welcome to proceedings today Daniel Johnson, member in charge of the bill, who is present to present and move his amendments. And I'm also pleased to welcome Ash Denham, the Minister for Community Safety. This is the committee's first experience of Stage 2 proceedings at a hybrid meeting. So for information, if there are any votes on amendments, I will ask those in the room to raise their hands in the usual fashion, and members joining remotely to vote using the chat box on the Blue Jeans function. And I would then, if that arises, read out the votes to aid recording and transparency. Now, the clerks would, of course, record any such result, and I would then read it out. If any member who's here in person wishes to take part in the debate, please simply indicate in the usual way by catching my attention, and anyone remotely simply by typing R in the Blue Jeans chat, Blue Jeans chat or the WhatsApp group for members. It's probably easiest if we just stick to the one thing, if possible, the Blue Jeans chat function. If any members who are joining us remotely, of which there are 4, if you have any technical problems during the Stage 2, please contact myself and the clerks so that we can suspend the meeting until we regain connectivity. I think that is clear to everyone because we have used hybrid or had hybrid meetings before. So I will now move on, and we will now move to consideration of amendments. So at this stage, I will call Amendment 1 in the name of Daniel Johnson, which is grouped with Amendments 2, 3, 4 and 5. So I'll ask Daniel Johnson to move Amendment 1 and speak to all amendments in the group. Daniel Johnson.
Thank you very much, Convener. And can I begin by, first of all, thanking the committee for their ongoing focus and work on my bill, and indeed the kind of very supportive work in the Stage 1 report. Can I also thank the Minister for her very constructive engagement with regard to this matter. Amendment 1 refers to Section 1, Subsection 1, which makes it an offence for a person to assault, threaten, abuse, obstruct or hinder another person who is a retail worker as defined in Section 5 and who is engaged at the time of the offence in retail work as defined in Section 6, Subsection 2. The amendment that I am bringing forward this morning removes obstruct and hinder as part of the offence. The terms obstruct and hinder involve behaviour which intentionally prevents or impedes a retail worker from carrying out their duties and are elements of the offence, and these are elements of the offence which have drawn the most negative comment. And I recognise the issues raised by the committee and indeed the Minister at Stage 1, and therefore this amendment, along with others in the group, removed this element from the bill. The original intention for including these terms was to catch the situation where, for example, a member of the public refuses to move on after being refused the sale of alcohol and the retail worker is prevented from doing their job and moving on to the next customer. Another example might be where a retail worker is using equipment, for example, a shopping trolley, and a customer refuses to get out of the way in a similar set of circumstances. I felt that such types of behaviour would not be caught by other elements of the offence and indeed can lead to escalation. There is precedent for this, for including obstruct and hinder, as it has been used in other pieces of legislation such as the Police Scotland Act of 1967 and the Emergency Workers Act of 2005. But having listened to the concerns of the committee about the practical impact of including obstruct and hinder as part of the offence, and its belief that this could be open to misinterpretation, and indeed to the Scottish Government's concerns that criminalisation of such behaviour is too low a threshold for criminal sanctions to be available, accordingly I've brought forward these amendments. The Scottish Government also indicated that in order to support the bill, these elements of the offence should be removed at stage 2. And I gave the commitment at that time to do so, and hence have lodged these amendments at stage 2 to that end and effect. The other amendments in the group are consequential and remove the words obstruct and hinder in the other places that they occur. I was literally just about to close, but I'm happy to take the intervention.
All right, Mr. Simpson.
Well, thanks for taking the intervention. I am new to the bill, so I'm listening with great interest. And you've described situations where shop workers could be prevented from doing their job. You used an example of somebody maybe getting in the way of a shopping trolley. So do you think the term abuse would cover those situations?
So that would be covered in other elements of aspects of my bill. And more importantly, I think the key issue here is the unintended consequences of this, where simply someone getting in the way, there's a question of whether or not that's a serious enough action to warrant criminalisation of that behaviour, and indeed whether or not there could be instances where that happened inadvertently and therefore criminalise the person. Hence, my bringing forward of these amendments to remove those elements. But thank you, Mr Simpson, for your intervention. But with that, Convener, thank you for your time, and I move Amendment 1 in my name.
Thank you, Mr Johnson. Do any other members have any questions for Mr Johnson or wish to say anything at this stage? Rhoda Grant, please.
Can I just make a couple of comments, Convener? Just simply to thank Daniel for his pragmatic approach, and he took on board the committee recommendations and brought forward these amendments. I think we made clear while we were looking at the bill that this is not about people's reaction to the pandemic, but the pandemic brought into very clear view the crucial role played by retail workers, and we must ensure that they're safe when carrying out that job. Asda and the Co-op Party, of which I'm a member, told us about the abuse that some retail workers face, not just during the pandemic, but in normal times as well. And violence, threats and abuse should never be part of somebody's job. And that's especially so the case when we approach the Christmas period, which is renowned for retail workers facing threats and abuse. And I believe the Minister and indeed the Scottish Government could maybe play Santa Claus to retail workers and allow this bill to be passed before the end of this year. And that's maybe pushing my luck, but I'm happy to do so.
All right, we now have a queue of members, presumably not to comment on Santa Claus. Richard Lyle and then the Deputy Convener.
Thank you, Convener. Can I also echo the comments made by Rhoda Grant and thank Daniel Johnson for bringing this bill forward and amending the taking out abuse, obstruct and hinder. As a previous grocery manager, I know only too well what can happen within a shop, and I also, as a former member of USDA, Union of Shop Distributors and Allied Workers, supported this bill straight from the start. I echo the sentiments of Rhoda and hope that the government will carry this forward and give shop workers an early Christmas. Thank you, Convener.
Deputy Convener Willie Coffey.
Thank you very much, Convener. Just to commend the member on the manner in which he's gone about working with the Scottish Government to resolve this issue. He clearly understood the concerns of all of the committee members and has worked hard to resolve the issue for us. So I'm very hopeful, Convener, that members may see that as a positive sign about how members' bills can be brought forward to the committee and can be worked on together in a spirit of cooperation. And I'm delighted, hopefully, that the members will support Daniel's amendments today.
Thank you. And I think no other member has indicated a wish to speak, so I'll now ask the Minister for her comments.
Thank you, Convener, and I'm pleased to be here this morning on behalf of the Scottish Government regarding Amendments 1 to 5 lodged by Daniel Johnson. So, as I indicated at stage 1, the Scottish Government very much recognises the important role that retail workers play within local communities and also within the wider Scottish economy. And it's absolutely right that retail workers should be protected by our criminal laws. And as such, Daniel Johnson's bill is well-intentioned and also well-timed, given that COVID-19 has very much helped to shine a light on the important role that retail workers play. I have said that this bill has the potential to make the general public think more about their behaviour when they're interacting with retail workers, especially in such difficult and challenging times. However, I was clear that the Scottish Government would only be able to support the bill if the obstructing and hindering elements of the proposed new offence were removed. And that's because it was our view that the inclusion of such elements set too low a threshold for criminal sanction. Therefore, I'm very happy to see that the amendments lodged by Daniel Johnson to remove those elements of the offence. The amendments themselves are quite simple, and the Scottish Government considers they achieve the policy intent of removing effectively the hindering and obstructing elements from the proposed offence in the bill. If the amendments are agreed, that will mean that an offence in the bill is committed where a person assaults, threatens or abuses a retail worker when that worker is engaged in their work. In conclusion, the bill as amended will reduce the prevalence of attacks and abuse towards retail workers. Hopefully, it will help emphasise how important the role of a retail worker is, and hopefully will also help retail workers feel safer in their jobs. So I would ask the members of the committee to vote in favour of the amendments 1 to 5 lodged by Daniel Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Mr Johnson, to wind up and to press or withdraw your amendment.
Thank you, Convener. So briefly, in summary, first of all, I should probably also declare, as Rhoda Grant did, that I'm a member of USDA and indeed the Cooperative Party. Can I thank the Minister for her supportive remarks, and I'm very pleased to have been able to work so constructively with the Government on this. Just briefly, I think Rhoda Grant was quite correct. I think COVID has, really shone a spotlight on the important public safety role that retail workers play, but also the fact that we do rely on them to uphold the law. And that is why this piece of legislation is so important. And indeed, she's quite correct in saying that with at Christmas time, the increased volume of alcohol sales really does make these issues far more acute. Can I thank Richard Lyle for his support and acknowledge his enthusiasm behind the scenes, and likewise thank Willie Coffey for his kind words. I do believe that actually the most important role we play in this Parliament is when we legislate, and therefore the stage 2 process is one that I think has to be engaged with constructively and pragmatically. So with that, I will draw my remarks to a close, and I will press Amendment 1 in my name.
Thank you. The question is that Amendment 1 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are all agreed. So I would now call Amendment 2 in the name of Daniel Johnson, already debated with Amendment 1. Daniel Johnson, to move or not to move?
Move.
The question is that Amendment 2 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We're all agreed. So the question is that Section 1 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Thank you. And I now call Amendment 3 in the name of Daniel Johnson. already debated with Amendment 1. Daniel Johnson to move.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 3 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
All agreed. The question then is that Section 2 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
I would now call Amendment 4 in the name of Daniel Johnson, already debated with Amendment 1. Daniel Johnson to move.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 4 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
All agreed. The question is then that Sections 4 to 8 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
Thank you. All agreed. And I would now call Amendment 5 in the name of Daniel Johnson, already debated with Amendment 1. Daniel Johnson to move.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 5 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
All agreed. Thank you. And the final question is that the long title be agreed to. Are we all agreed to this long title of the bill?
Yes.
Good. We're all agreed to that as well. Very well. Thank you. That ends stage 2 consideration of the bill. The bill will now be reprinted as amended at stage 2. The Parliament has not yet determined when stage 3 will be held, so we don't yet know about whether or not it will come before Christmas, as wished for by Rhoda Grant and a number of other members of the committee. But members will be informed in due course, along with the deadline for lodging stage 3 amendments. In the meantime, stage 3 amendments can be lodged with the clerks in the legislation team. I would like to thank the member in charge and the Minister for joining us this morning, and I will briefly suspend the meeting at this point. Welcome back to the meeting. We will now move to item on the agenda number 3. This was related to the European Union Withdrawal Act 2018. The Insolvency Amendment EU Exit Scotland Regulations 2020 are made under the powers conferred on devolved authorities in the EU Withdrawal Act 2018. Under the protocol between the Scottish Parliament and the Scottish Government, the committee is required to consider whether the procedure attached to the SSI is appropriate or should be changed. The instrument is subject to the negative procedure, and the Scottish ministers have suggested it should be categorised under the low protocol category as the amendments are technical. Further information is contained in paper 2 of the committee's meeting information. Is the committee content that this SSI is subject to negative procedure? All content? In that case, we will move on to item agenda 4, or even agenda item 4. Again, this is subordinate legislation, and we are considering the Insolvency Amendment EU Exit Scotland Regulations 2020, or SSI 2020/337, just discussed. These regulations amend the Insolvency EU Exit Scotland Amendment Regulations 2019, which address failures of the law to operate effectively and other deficiencies in devolved legislation on cross-border insolvencies arising from the withdrawal of the UK from the EU. Does any member have any substantive issues they wish to raise, or are we all content that the instrument comes into force? As no member has raised any issue, I will take it that we are agreed, and with that, I will further suspend the meeting at this stage. Thank you. We now move to agenda item number 5 on subordinate legislation. And these are 3 pieces of subordinate legislation relating to the Scottish National Investment Bank. And I welcome Fiona Hislop, Cabinet Secretary for Economy, Fair Work, and also her officials, Graham Watson and Ninian Christie, who are joining us remotely. Under consideration are the Scottish National Investment Bank plc and South of Scotland Enterprise Miscellaneous Listings Regulations 2020 in draft form, the Companies Act 2006 Scottish Public Sector Companies to be audited by the Auditor General for Scotland Order 2020, a draft again, and the draft Scottish National Investment Bank plc Miscellaneous Listings Order 2020. As these instruments are inextricably linked or bound up together, we intend to consider them together in the first instance, and after that we will make the formal decision about each separately. So I will at this stage invite the Cabinet Secretary to make her opening statement on the instruments. Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, Convener. Good morning, Committee. The 3 SSIs you're considering today are routine pieces of secondary legislation. They concern the audit arrangements for the Scottish National Investment Bank and the application of public bodies duties to the Scottish National Investment Bank and to the South of Scotland Enterprise. These 3 SSIs all fulfil commitments made previously during the passage of the Scottish National Investment Bank Act and the South of Scotland Enterprise Act. The Companies Act 2006, Scottish Public Sector Companies to be audited by the Auditor General for Scotland Order 2020, allows the bank's accounts to be subject to audit by the Auditor General for Scotland. It also disapplies a provision in the Companies Act that would require the bank to appoint external auditors in addition to its accounts being subject to audit by the Auditor General for Scotland. The Scottish National Investment Bank plc Miscellaneous Listings Order 2020 applies the public sector equality duty and the public body climate change reporting duties to the bank. The Scottish National Investment Bank plc and South of Scotland Enterprise Miscellaneous Listings Regulations 2020 applies the Fairer Scotland duty to the bank and to the South of Scotland Enterprise. It also applies the Scottish-specific equalities duties to the bank. For the Committee's information, we have included South of Scotland Enterprise in the application of the Fairer Scotland duty as the interim guidance to public bodies on the application of the duty is due to be updated in 2021. We therefore wanted to ensure consistency in the legal position by applying the duty to both these new bodies before that updated guidance is issued. And I'm happy to answer any questions the Committee may have.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. Are there any questions from committee members? Andy Whiteman.
Thanks very much, Convener. In relationship to the Scottish National Investment Bank plc Miscellaneous Listings Order 2020, my understanding from the information we have is that this will come into force on the 26th of November. I'm just wondering, has Parliament been given the usual 28 days to consider this?
I'll refer to my officials. I think Graham Watson's online to check the dates of laying, but I would assume that the same process applies to other SSIs in terms of the timetabling should be met.
Do we have Graham Watson there?
There might be one.
Yes, he's just come online now. Graham Watson.
Good morning. So we've tabled all these SSIs together, and so this committee, the Parliament should have its full timetable available. I know the committee moved this schedule forward to ensure that was the case, which we're grateful for. I can clarify that point perhaps and come back to the committee separately.
Andy Whiteman.
Okay, thanks. And maybe you could clarify why this particular SSI comes into force on the day after which it's made, rather than a month or two after it's laid.
Well, clearly we want to... Sorry.
So Does the Cabinet Secretary want to come back on that, and then Graham Watson, or dependent on the Cabinet Secretary?
Okay, I'll go first then if Graham wants to supplement. Clearly, we want to get the National Investment Bank established as quickly as we can in terms of what we'd set out. So obviously we're in the final stages of that. So clearly we're in the final stages of establishing the bank. So it makes sense to make sure the provisions that are required are all enabled and set up, etc. But if there's anything else that Graham Watson would want to supplement on that.
Graham Watson.
Just to echo the Cabinet Secretary's words, and happy to come back on that point in particular.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Are there any other questions from committee members, either here in the committee room or online? I don't see any. So I will therefore move on to the next piece of subordinate legislation, which is the Scottish National Investment Bank PLC and South of Scotland Enterprise Miscellaneous Listings Regulations 2020, and we're moving on to the question of moving the instruments in order. And so we now move to the formal debate on the motion to approve, and I would invite the Cabinet Secretary to formally move the motion.
I formally move that motion.
Does any member wish to speak in the debate on the motion? If not, I will put the question. The question is that motion S5M 23180 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. As we are all agreed, that is agreed. And we now move on to the next piece of sub-ledge, and that is the Companies Act 2006, Scottish Public Sector Companies to be audited by the Auditor General for Scotland, Order 2020. And I will invite the Cabinet Secretary to formally move the motion in the debate.
I formally move that motion.
Does any member wish to speak in the debate on the motion? As no member wishes to speak, I will put the question. The question is that motion S5M 23181 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We're all agreed, so that is agreed to. And then finally, the sub-ledge Scottish National Investment Bank PLC Miscellaneous Listings Order 2020. And I would again invite the Cabinet Secretary in the formal debate to move the motion.
I formally move that motion.
Does any member wish to speak in the debate on that motion? No member wishes to speak, so I'll put the question. The question is that motion S5M 23182 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. As everyone is agreed, that is agreed, and in light of timing, I would ask the committee to agree that myself and the clerk produce a short factual report of the committee's decisions on all three instruments and arrange to have it published. Are we all agreed on that? Yes. Very well. At this stage, I will suspend the meeting and move into private session. Thank you, Cabinet Secretary.